So food, I know this is on everyone's mind right now. We are working it out. We will have food in a little bit, and when it gets in, we'll take a break, everyone get food, and then go back to the talk. Um, but first we have an announcement from Claire Flowers from Covalence. So if you guys want to welcome her up.
My name is Claire Flowers. I'm with Covalence. I'll make this kind of short. Thank you so much for letting me have the floor today for a couple of minutes. Raise your hand if you're familiar with coding boot camps and the whole concept behind them. Okay, so everyone's relatively familiar. So we are Covalence. We're a 10-week coding boot camp. Our course focuses on full stack development. So we do everything from front end to back end. So it's fully immersive, and that means that students who come into our class, they're mainly adults. Their age ranges are anywhere from 18 to 45 to 50, and they quit their jobs to take the class. So these people are looking for complete career changes. So we're launching in Chattanooga May 30th. A little bit of a background. The guys who started the program started a software company in Birmingham. The program started there in Birmingham at a place similar to the Edney building. It's called Innovation Depot. It's a startup incubator, so the incubator had goals to grow the technology workforce in Birmingham because they had a huge problem finding and sourcing developer talent and attracting people to the city. So the founders of the company had a services company. They specialized in mobile and web development, and they had this huge problem where they couldn't find developers that they needed to help build their products and help on the services side of their business. So they got together with Innovation Depot and said, how can we solve this problem on a local level? And they looked at boot camps like in Austin and San Francisco and things that they were doing to try and fix this problem. And they came up with a curriculum, and the first class that they did was front end. And then since there, it's kind of, the curriculum has changed and evolved over time based off employer feedback and things that the students are constantly requesting for the different curriculums. So we launched in Birmingham 2 years ago this September, and we've had a little over 85 graduates complete the class. Our job placement rate is around 85%, and salary ranges are anywhere from, in Birmingham, 45,000 starting salaries to, we've had people get out making 100. So the backgrounds of the students who take our class are people who work in comic book stores to people who have master's in finance degrees. So it's been extremely rewarding, and it's been an incredible experience in Birmingham to help grow the tech talent there. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about the program and give you more information. I am the Director of Student Success, so I am not technical at all. So if you have any technical questions and you see my eyes glaze, it's just because I'm more on the people side of things. But my main goal is to make sure that all of our students are as successful as possible in the program. So I'm focused on networking with potential employers, and I'm also putting together a mentor group for the summer class that starts May 30th. So a little bit of a rundown about the mentor program. We're looking for mid to senior level developers who just want to give back and provide guidance to some of our students who are making a complete career change. A lot of times the students have a little bit of, nervousness going into the class because they're coming from a completely different industry, and as you can probably understand, it can be a little bit daunting. So we ask our mentors to participate in a couple of events throughout the class. Again, it's 10 weeks. One is helping them build their resumes, introducing them to people around town, and then we have a graduation demo day that we ask our mentors to kind of participate in and help guide the students in architecting their projects. So we would love to have anybody participate. We have a couple of people so far who have signed up. I think we'll end up having 15 students for this first cohort. So if you would like more information, come see me after the talk. We're looking for just people who want to give back and help with growing the local tech community. So thank you again. I won't talk for much longer, but again, my name is Claire Flowers. I'm going to post all of my contact information in the Slack channel. Trying to keep paper low. Also, my business cards didn't come in yet. So, but I'll be posting my contact information, and if you like more information, come see me.
Okay, so again, welcome to CHADEV. Today we have Tomiko Peirano, and she's going to be talking about product management by Proxy. And so let's give her a round of applause.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am really honored to be here. My name is Tomiko Peirano, and I'm in business development at Centresource in Nashville. But prior to that, I was a product strategist there. And Centresource is a custom development software shop that we specialize in UX and front-end development. So what I'm going to be talking about today is product management by proxy, or how I stopped worrying and learned to love a product even though it wasn't really my product. And I think this is probably a pain point that we've all felt at some point, where you know that you can only pour in so much, but at the end of the day, that product really belongs to somebody else. So what are we going to be talking about? This is really kind of a product management checklist, and I hope it's applicable to you guys. I assume that the majority of the people here are developers, but I do think that there's a lot of takeaways for everybody, because really this is for anyone who wants to work better on a team, and that's from everybody from the designer to leadership to the developers. Everybody needs to be in alignment. And you know, really why we're talking about this is that I think we've probably all been involved in a product build that did not go so well, and that there are a lot of pitfalls, common pitfalls that we've probably all experienced. And so this is really the things that I've taken away in my time at Centresource and before Centresource, you know, the mistakes that I've made, the wins that I've seen, and why I think that those things were accomplished. So really what you want to gain at the very beginning, the whole goal for any product team is to collaborate towards success and alignment. And without alignment and without collaboration, you really can't have success. So as a product manager that is only going to be working on something for a finite amount of time, your goal really should be to gain and maintain alignment throughout the process. And the best way to do that is to bring everybody on the team with you as much as you can. And really, the primary focus behind that is that you don't want your team to be lost without you if and when you have to step away from that product engagement. So the first thing you want to do is you cannot make yourself essential to any product success, right? Don't hold anything hostage to you. Don't silo information inside your own head. You really want to think about this as you're going into a relationship, but you know you're going to break up. And so I can't do all of the cooking and you can't do all of the cleaning, because when we break up and I leave, how are you going to feed yourself? So you want to share that responsibility and share those skills as much as you can, and obviously as much as it makes sense for the people that you're working with. So one thing that we try to do is give our clients and our teammates as much guidance as we can, but along with that comes autonomy and authority. So at the beginning of an engagement, maybe we're taking our client through user testing, or we're taking them through technical decisions around off-the-shelf solutions versus a custom build. But as we move through the engagement and we go through our iterations, maybe at some point I'm going to want my client to really own the user testing, and I might be there as backup and support for them. But really I want them to own that more and more, so that by the end of the engagement, they're empowered and they have the knowledge to do that work for themselves. We're also trying to teach people, I want to set clear expectations around what we're responsible for. And really I want to teach them how to be the smartest product owner that they can possibly be. And hopefully in exchange, every new engagement that we take on is helping our team learn better, different, complex business problems that we need to solve. Sorry, I'm going to take a little bit of water. The last thing that you want to do in order to help that collaboration is you really want to be delegating when it's appropriate. So as soon as you can, and when it makes sense for yourself, for the team, and for the product, hand tasks over to other people on the team. This has got to be something that you know you're making that decision when you're comfortable with it, but it's also a way that allows you to maintain a guiding hand as much as you can, but it also helps you begin to teach people on your team in a much more direct, applicable way. So the first thing that you want to do is really define what a successful partnership looks like. And you want to make sure that your definition of success lines up with their definition of success. So there's a series of questions that you want to really unpack. These are questions maybe if you're looking at a freelance opportunity and you're going through the interview process, or you're just starting off as a new hire, asking questions. So the first questions you really want to understand for yourself is, what work are you getting hired to do? Perhaps you're getting brought in to automate an analog product or service. Perhaps you're getting brought in to optimize an existing product that's maybe fallen by the wayside a little bit and needs some fresh blood. Maybe you're there to help them understand their users. Maybe they've got a product, but it's just not, it doesn't have the traction that they were expecting. So maybe there's some market analysis that they need done. Or maybe they just don't even know what success looks like, and you really want to help them understand and establish their goals and their definition of success. You also want to figure out why you're getting hired to do this work. Perhaps there's an existing team, but they just don't have the bandwidth to get the work done, and you're getting brought in as a relief valve. This is, a lot of the time, Centresource gets hired to be that resource allocation relief valve for people. Maybe we're just dropping in a lead developer or UX specialist to kind of help a team get across the finish line. Maybe you're getting brought in because there's a product, but it's failing, or it's outdated, and the company really needs that fresh injection of energy and perspective to really kind of jumpstart the product again and make sure that it's staying relevant and impactful for their business. Or maybe they don't even have a product to begin with, and you're really there to help set that ground for them and to begin that product process for them. And that's really an exciting opportunity. It's also can be, you know, sometimes the most difficult when you have to establish that product understanding and that product language for a company. You want to understand what they already have. Do they even have a product? And if they do, what stage is that product in now? Maybe they just have a handful of business requirements. Maybe they've got a roadmap. Maybe they've even built out a prototype. But you really want to understand how much thought have they already put into that product. And if they do have a product, what kind of users do they have? What are the numbers? What kind of segments have they broken things out into? Have they crafted personas? And beyond that, what kind of data do they have around their users? Is there help desk software that you can tap into and look at? What kind of analytics are going to be available to you to unpack? And more importantly, if they do have users, who are their early adopters and do they have a product council? These are going to be the people who are most invested in that product. Are you going to have an opportunity to interface with them or interview with them? What kind of resources are available to you? Is there a product team? Do they have engineers? Do they have designers? Or are these resources that you're going to have to source and bring in-house for them? And ultimately, do they have a destination in mind? What do they want this product to do for them? What are their expectations of this product? Are they reasonable? What are their goals? And really, you want to figure out, what do they do? And that's, moreover, obviously, you want to figure out what they do, but you want to know how they think about what they do. So you want to ask people for their elevator pitch. Are you getting clear, concise breakdowns of the service or the product that they provide? Do they have a solid problem solution statement? What does their business model look like? How do they plan on making money? Do they even plan on making money? That's something that you will probably be held accountable for. So you really want to know, what are their expectations around revenue stream with the product? And the competition, how well do they understand their competitive landscape? How much thought have they put into their competitive landscape? And also, do they have a strong enough differentiating value proposition? This is probably the most crucial slide, in my opinion. You really want to know what they think about their product. And really, that starts with leadership. And you want to know, are they excited about this product, or is moving into technology something that they're doing begrudgingly? I think probably this room, more so than most, has felt the pain of leadership that expects a product to get built, you're tasked with building that product, but they're really not that excited about it, and your work is kind of for naught. You want to know who owns this product, right? Who's going to be in charge of it? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it engineering? And also, who's responsible for growth? A lot of times you see kind of a schizophrenic understanding of that in a company, and that's really where you see products fail. Is there consistent product understanding? This is really important. When you ask for that elevator pitch across a company, you want to ask it of sales, marketing, engineering, whatever internal stakeholders that you're allowed to talk with. Are their elevator pitches lining up? And if not, then you understand that there's probably a deeper ground setting that you've got to do at the very beginning to get everybody on the same page about what you're building, why you're building it, and for whom. And finally, do they have a concept of failure? This is really important. A lot of people always think about the happy path of their product. Oh, well, it's going to be so great, and everybody's just going to, if I build it, they will come. I'm sure we've all heard that. But really, you want to help people understand there is room for failure, and there has to be room for failure. What happens if we don't hit X number of customers next year? What's the rollback plan? Do we have one? It's very important to set people up to understand that the product may not be the success that they want it to be. Have they experienced pain points around product ownership? AKA, do they really understand what it takes? So you want to understand, have they built products before? And out of that, what were some of the key wins and losses that they experienced with that previous product ownership? That's going to help you understand how they approach products in the first place, what they expect out of products, and that's really going to give you a better chance of understanding how you need to position yourself for your success and for the product's success. Do they know the ugly truth that technology is expensive? Technology is ever changing. It breaks, it becomes outdated, it requires upkeep. Have they had to make tough business decisions around technology? I think a lot of times people are like, application, software, just here, take it, you go figure that out. I don't want to know about it. That puts a lot of onus and responsibility on people who maybe don't have the authority to own that responsibility. So you really want to get a good understanding about, you know, how am I going to help them make a decision around, like I said, that off-the-shelf solution versus that custom build solution? Is this a conversation that people are going to be open to? And maintenance, again, do they understand that software requires constant care? Do they understand that when you go live, the thing is not done, it's just live? Bugs are going to happen, things are going to change, there's going to be costs, additional costs post-launch. So in conclusion, you want to establish alignment early on that's going to help everybody have a clear, shared understanding of what your end goal is. You want to make sure that they understand the power of technology for their business. How is technology going to impact and shape their business going forward? Do they understand wins and risks? Do they know what success looks like? And more importantly, do they understand what failure looks like? And how much experience and comprehension does this company have? Does this team that you're stepping into have? How much do they already know? How much do they already have? And this is going to affect everything, even the vocabulary that you're using when you're talking with your team. The last thing you want to do is talk over somebody's head and then they're afraid to raise their hand and say, I don't understand what you just told me, but I'm going to make a decision off of what you just told me. So you really want to make sure that everybody is speaking the same language and you're reading the same book. The next thing that you want to understand is how you're going to be sharing the work. It's important when you go into any new project or engagement that you know you have that finite amount of time with them, right? So sharing the work is really essential, and making sure you do that in healthy and supportive ways is absolutely key for success. So you want to start unpacking accountabilities really early on, and there's a handful of things that everybody is accountable for understanding. The first thing is the expertise. We tell our clients, you are the expert of your industry, we're the expert of technology, and it's only when we share and collaborate that expertise that we can ensure the best possible success for your product. So you own your business, we'll own the technology, and we're going to work together to make sure that we build something that's right for you. Does everybody have a good understanding of concepts like dependencies, constraints, and assumptions? I think this is probably something that's bitten us all a little bit in the ass in our professional careers, is when people don't understand why you can't get your job done because there's a dependency that's roadblocking you. Or maybe there's a constraint. I can't build everything you're asking me to because you've only given me 6 weeks to make this thing. Or your budget isn't big enough for all of this scope that you've outlined for me. And finally, assumptions. This is probably the hardest concept to help people understand, particularly people who are new to owning software, but it's really key. I think we all know that there's always known unknowns when we go into a new build. Something's going to be uncovered, something's going to be uncovered, something's going to pop up that we weren't expecting, and it's going to set us back 2 weeks. It's going to cost us another $10,000, whatever it is. You really want to make sure that people are on board with that going into the build. And finally, you really want to make sure that you're unpacking the responsibilities. And this is everything from who's going to help me with QA, who's going to hand over the content and the assets that I need for the product, but ultimately, it's about communication and feedback. Who on marketing is my point person? Who in sales is the person that I can reach out to? And do you understand that in order for us to hit the deadline, I need your feedback within 24 hours, that sort of thing, but really making sure that everybody understands what they're accountable for and that they agree to it with you. You want to agree on success. So the way, there's a handful of ways that you can get there. The first thing that we like to do is you want to ask people, what's the master of this project, right? So that's the iron triangle. Is it scope, timeline, or budget? I'm sure, is everybody familiar with the iron triangle in here? If you've ever had to explain the iron triangle, so it's basically their scope, timeline, and budget are the three factors that it's going to go into any product build. And we've had to explain this, so I've come up with a fast food analogy that I found to be relatively helpful in helping our clients understand the iron triangle. When I'm talking about scope and I'm placing an order at a restaurant, I want a hamburger, I want french fries, and I want a soda. And that's what I want you to give me. If I'm letting timeline be the master, then I want you to give me whatever food I can get in the next 2 minutes. And if budget is the master, then I want whatever food I can afford for $1. So that's a really kind of easy way that people start to understand, okay, I start to get this. Next, you want to make sure that everybody has metrics in mind, right? So you either have to review or help them establish metrics that this project is going to be measured against. You also want to make sure that those metrics are reasonable and attainable. And if they're not, then you're going to have an additional, probably slightly harder conversation. You also want to make sure that we've agreed on the cost of acquiring customers as well as their overall lifetime value. Is leadership on board with sizable marketing spends? You can't just build a product and expect people to take on, right? You need to be able to show people where the product is. You need to be talking to the users that you've identified. Is everybody on board with the amount of money that's going to cost? You want to start to make your team as soon as possible. And by doing that, you want to, again, like I said before, what resources are available to you. And that's everything from manpower to software and tools. You know, are we going to be using Sketch, OmniGraffle, whatever it is? If not, do I have the budget to bring in some additional software resources? Am I going to be able to hire additional players that I deem are going to be necessary for this product build? Am I stepping in, maybe I'm stepping into an existing team. And if I am, what's that team's expectations? How many of you have been in a situation where you've been working with a product team and all of a sudden a consultant is just dropped in the middle of it? And you're sort of like, who's this person? You know, and you maybe don't have a chance and you're under a deadline, so there's not a lot of opportunity to make sure, how can we work together in the best possible way? Who's going to be sharing the work with you? Okay, so this is really key. Who's going to be doing what? You want to get people set up with your expectations and their accountabilities as quickly as possible. Like I said before, who's owning QA with me? Who's going to be taking on user testing with me? And again, the faster that you can share the work and share your knowledge, the faster you can implement a process and an understanding that's going to be able to live on after you've stepped away from that product team. Doing the work, so getting down to the nitty-gritty. All right, are you going to have time to ramp up? And that's both within the industry that you're stepping into and with the product team that you're going to be working with. Is this something that you're going to have time to do prior to the engagement or at the beginning of your engagement? What kind of space for interviews are you going to be allowed to have? That's really important, especially if you're stepping into a new team or a new engagement. Excuse me. Pardon me. You want to be able to ask a lot of questions. And you want to ask them both of internal stakeholders and end users. This is also going to be a really great way for you to cement your understanding of the industry and the specific problems that you're helping them solve for. Do they have a good understanding of the roadmap or release cycles, or is that something you're going to have to introduce to them and help them implement? Is there a particular framework that they need you to work within? Is there something that you're going to have to introduce to them, and how much familiarity are you working with? Or is there going to be a learning process that you're going to have to account for as well? Are you baking in time for testing and reviews? And in general, all of that tends to bloat a timeline and create this idea of it shouldn't take you guys this long. But I think we all know, I want this change, why can't I have it in 2 hours? And you say, well, because I got to spin it up locally, I've got to make the change, we got to push it, we got to QA it, and then we're going to push it out to production. And that's not just a 15-minute change, that's actually more like 4 hours. Do people have reasonable expectations of how much time your work takes? Does anybody have any questions for me? I feel like I'm just sort of prattling on a little bit. Everybody good? All right. So in conclusion, it's essential that you begin the conversation around accountabilities and expectations as soon as possible. You want to make sure that everybody is signed off on their expectations of success and that it is mutually attainable. Do people understand what's needed and required to hit some or all of that success? Is your team delivering on what they promised? Are people doing what's needed and required, or are you still doing the majority of the work? Again, if you're not sharing the work, it's not going to get done when you step away from your team. And finally, are processes in place working for you and your team? What's really good is to hold little intermittent reviews, whether it's a sprint review or maybe you want to call it a mini 360. Have check-ins as often as you can with your team to make sure that the processes that you're using are working for everybody. It's far better to do tiny course corrections throughout the process than to let things go wildly off the rails. The next thing I want to talk about is handling conflict. And the first thing I want to say about that is that conflict is normal. When you are coming into a brand new team and maybe you're an unknown player, people aren't going to trust you. People are going to maybe need some time to figure out what you're about, and maybe there's a little bit of hazing that goes into that. And ultimately, you know what? People aren't going to agree. And I will say this, that's actually better for your product. The more perspective and opinion you can have pouring into your product, the better your product's going to be. You don't want a lot of the same people building the product because they're going to start making shared assumptions, and that's a really kind of insidious, passive way to let your product become a thing it's not supposed to be. So there are some common problems that we've seen, and I'm just going to kind of walk through what those are and then some solutions that I found to be really helpful in helping with them. So the first thing that I've experienced in particular is that there's a sniper. Maybe there's somebody on the client's team that is not happy that you've been hired to do the work. Either they don't believe in technology and they think it's a waste of time, or they wanted to do the work that you've been hired to do. So they are not going to be your cheerleader. Maybe it's a product company that doesn't actually have a product culture, right? There's no shared understanding of the product. Again, this is when you go around and you ask everybody for their elevator pitch and you start to hear wildly differing definitions of the product. That's really a good indicator that there's not a good product culture going on. Another thing that you want to make out, you want to keep an eye out on is, if people are pushing back on the timeline that you're asking for testing or even for iterations, and maybe you do like, hey, I really want to let's just push this feature out and see what happens. And people are saying, no, it's not done yet. It's not perfect. Wait. That to me is a red flag for a lack of product culture. Or maybe you hear a CEO say, well, I just really want this feature because my gut's telling me that we really need it, as opposed to making feature decisions and road mapping decisions based on user data. And finally, there's going to be product fatigue. And this is most common when you're dealing with a product company that's been looking at the same build for like 2 years, right? I think we've all probably been there where you just think, God, I don't want to think about this product ever again. So, maybe they're overwhelmed with technical debt. Maybe they've just been staring at the same code base for so long and they just don't care. They have found themselves just to kind of allow themselves to be removed from the product. And there's no motivation or impetus to really think about that innovation or that next step that's really going to take that product to the next level. So, some solutions. When you're dealing with a sniper, you really want to honor their authority because that's kind of what's being threatened when they're trying to snipe you. So a good thing to do is to take people out for coffee, and you really want to ask them, hey, what do you know? What do you value? And that's going to unpack a couple things. It's going to get you a deeper understanding of the product culture in that company, and it's also a really great way to help you recognize somebody's authority without giving up any of your own. You also want to figure out what they value, because if you have to keep working with this person, if I understand that this person really values prestige, then I know that any request I need to make of that person going forward, I'm going to maybe couch it in terms of, hey, you know what, if you can help me get this done, I think the CEO is going to be really excited about this. And then that person's like, oh yeah, you know what, I am going to help you out. Good call. When you're dealing with no product culture, the first thing that you want to remember is that you are objective. You're a new player in the room, you're an external accountability, and you have the objectivity around this product that maybe a lot of people at the company or around the table don't have. And there is a limited amount of power with objectivity because after a while, you've been there long enough and you start to slip into some of those same habits. But the thing that I want to task you with is if you've been hired to do this work, clearly there's a reason why they hired you, and chances are they're paying you a lot of money to be there, so be worth that investment. Push back on product assumptions, ask hard questions, task people to make critical thinking decisions around their product. Don't just let the go with the flow attitude or, well, that's just how we've always done it, be the final answer that you accept. So when you're dealing with product fatigue, the one thing that I want to state outright is first and foremost, nobody on your team is the user. It does not matter if you have a perfect fit to the user persona, you know too much about the product to be the end user. And it allows you to make some passive assumptions around workflow, screen layout. Everybody knows that that's the delete button. Well, no, that's a weird icon that you chose like at midnight last week. Nobody knows that's the delete button. You're not your user. And when you're dealing with product fatigue, and especially a product team that's just over it, a really good thing to do is if there is a call center, have your team sit in the call center, maybe an hour a week, whatever it is. If I can hear somebody's human voice say, I don't know where to submit the form. I don't know how. I fill out the form. I don't know how to submit it. I'm so frustrated. Hearing that person's pain is a really great way to remind yourself, right, I'm solving this for a person. I'm not just solving this for my boss. I'm not just solving this to get a paycheck. So in conclusion, conflict is to be expected. It is normal, and it is actually probably going to help you have a more successful product in the end. It's also going to help you and your team reach a higher level of productivity and success. So you want to handle authority, right? Take the time needed to understand what people know and what they care about. It's going to show you how to be a willing and compassionate partner, but it's also a way that's what allows you to maintain your authority. You want to remember that there is alignment and you were hired for a reason. There is a goal at the end of all of this work, and that is what you were striving to do. So remember, we defined success. We figured out how to be alignment. We figured out how to be aligned, and now you're starting to hand me these answers that are taking me away from that alignment. So again, you need to protect that success metric for the company and for the product. And finally, you want to remember the user. This is the fastest way to jumpstart a team that's over it. Has anybody dealt with any of this conflict in engagements? Yes? How did you handle? What was your conflict and how did you handle it?
Very open and frank about so if somebody's saying something they're not
Right, right. Anybody else? Yeah. So is that a vocabulary issue maybe, or is it as tactical as a vocabulary issue, or is it really just?
well, part of it was being northern,
Yeah.
open versus
Yeah.
southern, indirect.
You're like, oh, that's a great idea.
So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and their culture.
So again, I think that speaks to having different perspectives on a product team is really important, because I might communicate in a certain fashion that's different from the way you communicate, and that you do find that cropping up in things like, the interface structure or the wording that we're using to label certain features in an application. Having different people say, well, when I look at that to me, I have a negative connotation with that because I'm from Oregon or whatever it is. And it's that perspective that, maybe not everybody would have thought to have. Anybody else? Yeah. Get out of email. Yeah. Yes. Have direct conversations with people. Is food here, Anna? Oh, okay.
If people are answering, it's probably better because we are live streaming.
Oh, yes.
For the
Hi,
mic,
everybody.
So,
All right. So get out of email, right? Have direct conversations with people. See their facial expression when they express their thought to you. Absolutely. Anybody else? All right. You're nodding your head pretty vigorously.
Sorry, yeah, I was
You've
kind of
been the
once more at
sniper.
that. I kind of was the sniper. I can
Okay.
admit that now. And I will say, like, from my side, one mistake I really made at my last organization early on when we hired a new server admin was not respecting him enough early on and like figuring out enough about what he was good at. I just kind of assumed, you know, I'm the developer, I should be the master of everything, and then you're a dumb server admin, which I realize now was a big mistake. He actually knew a lot about software development, and it kind of damaged the relationship early on. So I did actually want to ask, so I've not really heard this phrase, product culture.
Yeah.
Like, how would you concisely define that? You kind of defined it in...
I defined it in terms of when it's lacking, right?
Right.
So I think what I would say product culture is that everybody is asking the question why. When something is being asked of them, it's like, okay, why are we building that? Why are you asking me for this? And that everyone holds that aspirational state of the product in the back of their mind, no matter what work they're doing. That everybody is thinking about the user or the definition of success, or that, you know, in 6 months the product's going to be this, but in a year the product is going to be that. That there is a shared roadmap and concept of the product, and that's everywhere from leadership all the way down to the person that's, you know, building out the prototype or whatever it is. But really it's, you can ask leadership and you can ask a developer what the product is and you'll get the same answer. So that was a very long answer to your question.
Right.
I apologize. Any other questions now that we're kind of taking a little break? Yeah, Cassie.
Yeah, amazing content. One of the things I was going to ask, since this is a group of developers, how would you give some good counsel or advice on how a development team should act and behave when they inherit a new product owner? What's the right sort of behavior patterns? He kind of alluded to sniper behavior, but what's a good behavior pattern?
That's a great question. Let me think about that a little bit. So, you know, this is good because I definitely wrote this talk for product owners, and I know I'm speaking to a room of developers, so I hope that this is still somewhat valuable for you guys. The thing that I'll say is that as developers, you guys are by nature problem solvers. And for the most part, products are built to solve problems for an end user. And in that sense, you guys are one of the biggest business assets that a company can have. And so you always want to, when you're dealing with a new product owner, I think it's really important that you do put a stake in the ground in terms of, this is what we're building, this is what we believe we're building, and this is why we're building it. And it's a chance for you to start to have some of that same language, because a product owner is always thinking about, what am I building? Why am I building it? Who am I building it for? And as much as you can have that conversation at the very beginning, it's going to show the product owner how much insight you guys have in the general context of what you're building. Where does this product fit in the overall ecosystem of the company that you're at? How much sort of big picture concepting do they really understand? And really try to figure out the alignment there as much as you can. I think that the thing that I have found when I'm working with my developers is that obviously when you're dealing with a particular feature build and it's like, man, but if I can just build it this way, then it can do this, this, and this. As the product owner, I have to step back and say, remember, what we're building is a record-keeping application. We're not building a medicinal tracking system. It's just to store records. Remember that. And they're like, okay, right, yes, you're right, you're right. So oftentimes it's, I would say as developers, it's, you want to say that I want you as the product owner to keep me on track, right? I think that we've all built things and all of a sudden you realize I totally built the wrong feature. That's actually not the user story. I did not solve this problem for the product. So you want the product owner to keep you guys on task, right? You want to make sure that you're building the thing towards the right end. I think the worst thing that we've done as developers or as a development firm is you build something and yeah, it looks good and it functions really, really well, but if it's not solving the problem for the company, what have you built? You've just written a lot of code that's not going to get used. And that's the worst possible thing, and that's really what the product owner is there to keep you from doing. So there's a lot of value and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And you also, I think, want to make sure that they have the right attitude about development I think a lot of times there's a lot of animosity, particularly between leadership and engineering teams. There's a lot of like, oh, the weird people that just like code and I don't even know what they do and they cost me a lot of money and blah, blah, blah. And I think there's a lot of feeling of like, well, you know what, we're doing all this hard work. As developers, we're here, we're in the trenches, we're doing all the hard work. Leadership doesn't understand us. Leadership doesn't listen to us. And the work that I try to do in Nashville, really, especially with the product meetup work that I do there, is how can I help leadership and engineering have better, healthier, collaborative conversations? So I don't know if that answered your question or not. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
You talked a lot about kind of a good conflict and bad conflict. How do you do an early identification of whether it's a good conflict or a bad conflict?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that good conflict, I would identify good conflict by I can still have the conversation around the topic, and that it is just a matter of a difference of opinion around the same question or the same solution, rather. Whereas bad conflict is, I don't even want to have the conversation with you. Just do what I told you to do. That to me is bad conflict versus I need it in 2 days. I can give it to you in 4 days, but I need it in 2 days. That's good conflict, right? Because within there is still room for compromise and collaboration versus just do the thing, I don't even want to talk to you about it. Does that answer your question? Anybody else? All right. Oh, the food is here. Should we take a quick break and get food and then we can wrap up? All right. Can I turn off the mic? Just for the intro? On? Hello. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly wrap up because I know that we are coming to the end of our time together and I want to make sure everybody gets back to their offices on time. So this is the last section, and this is really, or is it the last section? I might be wrong. I don't know my talk very well, y'all. I'm sorry. So again, obviously you want to kick the work off with the best intentions towards success, but it's also really important that you try to ensure that you're going to be ending with success. So again, your goal from day one should be to make sure that the product team is better and stronger than they were before you came along. And the end of your time together should not be filled with panicked requests for account credentials or that documentation you never spun up for anybody. Rather, it should be spent making sure that everybody on your team has what they need to succeed without you. So before you walk away, there are a handful of things that you want to do and a couple questions that you want to be asking in order to ensure a clean handoff. The first thing, this is fairly tactical, but people, processes, and passwords, okay? So people, who's going to be taking over for you? Is there a successor already handpicked to own that product team after you've departed? Most importantly, do you feel like that is the right person? And if it isn't, then you're going to want to have a conversation with the higher-ups before you step away. Does that person have, maybe they are the right person, but they don't have the bandwidth. They've got too many other accountabilities going on, and you're afraid that that's going to be a damage to the product at the end of the day. You want to make sure that the processes that you've instituted are working for the team. Does everyone know and understand third-party integrations, the overall build, et cetera? What's driving what? Does everybody know and have access to the account credentials? I cannot tell you how many times I've been, working on a product that we hadn't touched in maybe a year, and there is a third-party account, and it's with a developer that no longer works at the company, and we don't know how to get into that account. So make sure that the accounts you're setting up are universal and they're universally shared. Documentation and assets. Does sales have everything they need from you? Do they have what they need to help onboard new clients? Do they know how to properly talk about the product when they're out there selling it? Does marketing have everything that they need? Do they have a clear understanding of what the feature set is? Do they have a clear understanding of the value proposition and additional future features that are coming down the road? And speaking of that, the roadmap, is it clear? Does everybody understand what's coming up next and why? Is leadership on board with the roadmap and why certain things have been iceboxed or deprioritized? And the last thing, and this is really important, especially if you are a freelance consultant and you're really trying to grow your book of business, you absolutely have to ask for these takeaways. What can I use from this engagement in order to show an example of work from the work that I've done with you? Can I show screen grabs? Can I show wireframes? Is there an envisioned prototype that I'm allowed to have on my website? Ask people. Some people might tell you no, but you got to make the ask in the first place. Can you get a referral from them? A really good way to say this is, hey, now that you've worked with me, you know what I can do. You know how I operate. Is there anybody else in your network that you think could use my help? Ask for a referral. That's the greatest way to start snowballing your time as a freelance consultant. And ultimately, you do want to ask for a Project 360. It's really important for you and the company that you've been working with to have a moment to reflect on the engagement together. It's a really great way for you to understand what you've done particularly well, and it's also a really, really key factor in helping you understand where you need to shore up the work that you do and how you do it. Does anybody else have any tips on, maybe ending a relationship and good things that you've had to do in order to make sure that the team that you're stepping away from is successful? No, everybody's eating their pizza. This is a good way to end with successes with pizza. Yeah, what's up?
Having the ability to point someone to a document where they can read through in plain English what exactly is going on, that's really important. And there are a lot of different ways you can kind of facilitate that, but too often it's kind of left to the wayside.
Yeah, I think that's really, key. It's not just documentation around the product itself and why certain things were built the way that they were built. Again, that's even something like developer notes. Is the next developer going to have a clear understanding of how this thing needs to get deployed when I take it over? But also it's about the business documentation around the product itself as well. So there's that internal and external documentation. Anything else? All right, guys. Well, in conclusion, You want to own the fact that you have a finite amount of time together. I know I've said that a million times, but really that's kind of the crux of my talk. So you want to make sure that you're doing anything and everything you can to ensure the success is not dependent on you and you alone as a player on the team. I do have a lot of tools and frameworks that Centresource has built and that I've built. I have kind of a quick and dirty worksheet that I've extrapolated out of this talk, and I'll be sure to share that on the product meetup page later today. And that's just kind of highlight hits from the talk today. But if you feel like you could use any of them, I am in the ChaDev meetup group now, so if you guys want to reach out, direct message me. I'm on Meetup. You can ask me questions. I'm around. So yeah, that's me. I wear red glasses like 99% of the time. And if you guys are ever in Nashville and you want a friendly face, look me up. We're in Germantown. We're a very chill group of people, and we always have open desks for people to come work with us. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to speak with you guys, and have a great day.
Thank you. So next week, we're doing a talk on web-based virtual reality, so that sounds really awesome. You guys should come back. Sorry for the pizza delay, and yeah, go enjoy the rest of your day.